Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the FIMI A3. This is going to be a long video, so sit back and relax, get your favorite beverage because I want to cover as much as possible because I think this is a very important product. Now, when I first saw pictures of this guy, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it because it is from the same company behind the Xiaomi Mi 4K. And in fact, when I saw pictures of it, I thought, oh, they've just taken the Mi 4K and added a EIS 2-axis gimbal, EIS being electronic stabilized on the third axis, but that is not the case. As you can see, this one here, the Mi 4K, has a bigger footprint, not that much bigger, mind, but it's a lot heavier. So to give you an idea of the size, this is the Hubsan Zeno, which for me didn't quite make it, and it's about the same size as that. By the way, for me, the Mi 4K was the only copter that could compete with DJI, and we are, what, a year and a half on now, and that is still the case in my opinion. I think at the making of this video it cost £315, which is absolutely amazing for what it's capable of doing. You know, it comes with a 3-axis gimbal, and we have got optical flow and sonar, and it is just brilliant. But anyways, it's not about this model, but I thought it was important to mention it because it is the same company that has produced these two, although they have changed the name, and I think I know why they've changed the name because it can get confusing. For example, if you type in Xiaomi 4K into YouTube, you get a phone and not a copter. So I think they've just changed the name to FIMI, or they have just split their company so that they have got a copter side and they've got a phone side, electronic side, or whatever. So what is so amazing about this thing is, first of all, the price. It is £223. You can't get it at the moment. It's in pre-order stage, but it's got like 4,800 pre-orders, which if you add up is over 1 million GBP. So it's not like I need to sell this thing. I'm just glad that I have got it. And when I saw it, I knew people would instantly compare it to the Spark, and that kind of annoys me a little bit because it could not be any further from the Spark. In fact, it's only got one thing in common with the Spark, and that is how they have dealt with the camera. So it's a 2-axis gimbal, and then the third axis is done electronically. This was conceived as a selfie drone, and it didn't even come with a controller at first. It is small, and this obviously has a bigger footprint, and it is using 5.8 gigahertz analog video, and it is a fully fledged camera copter for me, although you could argue that so is this guy once they release the controller. The difference is, if you want this guy with the controller, it costs, I think, £450, something like that, which is, you know, double the price of this guy. So that's why this thing is so exciting. Not only that, though, is the controller that it comes with. It does not need a phone to operate, so everything that you are given in the package, you can fly with it. All you have to do is charge everything up, and the quality is absolutely superb as well. So before I get onto the controller, let's start off with the copter itself. So its size diagonally, it is 323 millimeters. The weight is about 550 grams. Its transmission distance, they say, is 1 kilometer. Now, I don't endorse flying these copters far, because I think with a camera drone, you know, you should walk up to the spot that you're trying to get decent footage of, and you know, get the footage that way rather than going long distance, especially now we are struggling with all of these stories. You know, we had Gatwick, we've got all of these near misses. Just I don't think long range is the way to go these days, but that is just my opinion. But yeah, I think maximum altitude is 500 meters. So we have the battery. It charges via a balance port, and you are given a charger. It's a charger very similar to the Hubsan Zeno, actually, very cheap, and that just plugs into the balance port there, and then it connects to the actual copter via pins. It is a 2000 milliamp hour battery, and can you see here it says the charged voltage is 12.75 volts, and this will only charge it to 4.2 volts per cell. Now, personally, I think that's a good thing, because overcharging your batteries, you can overcharge any battery to a high volt, but you'll be damaging it each time. The batteries are quite cheap though. I think they're going to be about 30 GBP, but that's my opinion on the battery. And then it just connects in there like so. Then we have got this button here. Now the button is pretty strange. If you press it once, you get these 3 beeps, and the manual doesn't tell you what those 3 beeps mean. I thought maybe it's telling you how much it is charged, but anyway, it is the old DJI double press to get the thing turned on. By the way, if you are wondering where the micro SD card goes on this guy, then it is there. It takes up to a 64 gigabyte, and it needs to be a class 10. You'll also notice at the back here as well, we have got a USB port, and that is for updating the firmware of the copter. So yeah, while this is all been in development, every day there has been a new bit of firmware, and it's pretty easy to upgrade the firmware as well. So the way that you upgrade the camera is you put a file onto the SD card and then put that in there, put the battery in, turn it on, and these lights at the front here, they will flash, and that will update the camera. But to update the copter, it actually has a data flash in there. So what you do is you plug in the USB connector there, and you'll get a folder pop up on your computer, and then you can update the flight controller. It's for things like no-fly zones and stuff like that, you know, and obviously improving things as the copter goes along. They've definitely done that with the Mi 4K for sure. By the way, the battery takes about 2.5 hours to charge through this guy, and we've got 2 lights on here. So we've got a red light for when it's charging, and then when it's finished charging you have this green light here. So next, let's look at the camera. Now unfortunately it doesn't have a gimbal protector for when you are carrying it around like some other copters have. That would have been nice, especially as it doesn't fold down. If we look underneath here, we have got individual wires connecting the gimbal rather than a ribbon, which I prefer. However, these can catch on this corner here, so yeah, it would have been nice to have a protector, but you know, I guess they are working to a price point here. It's nicely dampened though, as you can see. As for the specs of the camera, so its pitch angle is 0 degrees to 90 degrees. Then it has got a field of view of 80 degrees with a aperture of f2.0. It's a CMOS camera, of course. So the ISO range is 100 to 3200 in video, and then 100 to 1600 for photos. Yeah, there are a lot of camera options with this, which I really like. We have got a maximum video resolution of 1080p 30. It also does 25 FPS as well, but the max photo resolution is 3264 by 2448, and that is because these are actually 4K capable cameras, but what they have to do for the electronic stabilization is they have to crop them, and that's why we are stuck with 1080p for the video. So actually, if you are interested in this for photos, then it does a higher resolution. It does FAT32 and exFAT for the file format, and we have JPEG only at the moment for the picture format, and then MP4 for the video format. So as for the rest of the copter, the instructions do not detail what the motors are and what kV they are. What I do like though is how the props detach. It's very easy, you just push it down and twist, and they are marked as well. So these ones actually aren't marked, but you can't get it wrong, because if we look on the other side here, we have got a red marking, and again they just come off and twist like that. Very easy. And you are given 2 spare props in the package, which isn't bad, again, for the price. We do have these little feet here, and we've got LEDs on here as well. Now, something that is really interesting about this copter is this here. So if I just lift this up, they are calling this a DIY port, and this is the one downside of this copter. I was hoping that it was going to have optical flow and sonar like the Mi has, but this thing here is just bolted on underneath, and it's bolted on with 6 pins. You can actually buy these separately from AliExpress, by the way, and I'm hoping at some point perhaps, or maybe it was their original idea, that it was going to have optical flow. Maybe it doesn't need it, who knows, we'll have to see on the flight. But for now they're calling it the DIY port. So we've got a TX and an RX pin, we've got a VCC, so that is the voltage coming straight from the battery. We have got a ground, and then we have got a PWM, so you could maybe hook up a servo or something like that. And then the last one is called a GPIO, that's general purpose input and output, so basically a switch, so you could set up a switch. But I'm really hoping that at some point they come up with an optical flow thing for that, but we'll see how it flies. But I thought that was such an interesting thing to do. We've got a load of holes here as well, and that's probably to let heat out and also to make it lighter. We've also got some screws here as well, which they are saying are for the DIY port, so I don't know, maybe they've got some future plans for that, or they are just giving you all of this because you can select certain things in the controller for this DIY port, and we will take a look at that a little bit later. So next, let's take a look at the transmitter, and as you can see, we have got a nice big screen in the center, so no need for a mobile phone with this one, and that is because it is using 5.8 gigahertz analog video for the video feed, and you can go into the settings and change the band and the channel. I'll show you that a bit later. The resolution of the screen is 480 1080 by 272. I will say the screen is a little bit susceptible to reflections, and it's a fingerprint magnet as well. But if I unfold the antennas, by the way, I like the fact that the antennas unfold for storage. We have got some holes here, and they are designing a shield to reduce those reflections on sunny days, etc. So, as for the quality of the transmitter, for the price it's absolutely stunning, I think. I'd say it's on par with the Mi 4K. We have got proper gimbals, not toy gimbals. This was one of my biggest complaints with the Hubsan Zeno, is that it used the Xbox style gimbals, and there's just not enough resolution there, and you get jerky movements. These seem like proper gimbals to me, and they remind me of the DJI gimbals, so we should get smoother footage, hopefully. And if you are a pincher, then we've got a rubberized material which is grippy, and if you are a thumber, then we also have got some grip on the top there as well. This is the on button, and it's just a single press to turn it on. We have got sport mode and GPS mode, although both are in GPS mode when you have them selected. There is an attitude mode, but you have to go into the settings to get into that. So you're probably interested in the speeds in sport mode. So horizontally it will do 18 meters per second, and then it will ascend at 6 meters per second and then descend at 5 meters per second. Now in the normal mode, the horizontal speed is 10 meters per second, and the ascent and descent speed is 3 meters per second. And then we have got the return to home button here, so it's a 3-second press, I think, for it to return to home. Now, if you are within 10 meters of yourself, it will just rise to 3 meters and then come back. But if you are further than 10 meters away from yourself, then it will rise to 30 meters. Actually, you can set that height in the settings and then return home. Or if you are higher than 30 meters, then it will stay at that height and then just return to home, which is pretty good. By the way, this thing has got its own GPS unit built into it, which is something that the Hubsan Zeno didn't have. I know the Zeno does 4K, but I just thought, you know, that was great. So this has got special functions such as follow me, so with this having dedicated GPS, it should work better. So on the top we have got these rockers. This one is for the gimbal, and then this one is for the exposure value, or you can set it up as the PWM that I talked about earlier on the DIY port on the Copter. And then underneath here we have got 2 buttons. This one that is labelled B here, a short press will take a photo and a long press will start video. And then this one is for the general purpose input and output. So if you are using that, then that's what that is for. Then underneath, believe it or not, we have got a SD card slot, and this thing has got a built-in DVR. And not only that, it also has the coordinates of the Copter, or the last recorded coordinates, so if you have lost it then you can find it. Also has other stuff on there as well, and its resolution is 720p by 480, and it records at 4 megabit. Something to bear in mind with the micro SD card in the controller is that it will only accept up to a 32 gigabyte card, whereas the one in the Copter accepts up to a 64 gigabyte card. We also have got a tiny pinhole here as well. That is for resetting the firmware on the controller if it gets bricked. Then we have the USB connector, which is for charging. Now when you get this out of the box, the screen is set to always be on, and when you plug in the USB connector, it will power up the transmitter and the screen and stay on, and you'll get a little charging icon in the corner. Now what you really need to do is go into the settings, and there's an option that will turn the screen off after a number of seconds, and I'll show you how to do that later. Otherwise the screen is just going to be powered on the entire time that it is charging, and I have checked that when you move this stick, it is still charging when the screen comes back on. So I would say that's something they could fix in the firmware for when it is charging, for sure, to have the screen go off. Now this is a AV out port, so if you have got the right connector, that will go in there. You can plug that into your Fat Sharks, and guess what? You get all of the telemetry that you get on the screen. So if you take a normal pair of goggles and tune into the frequency of this, you won't get any of the telemetry. It's a little bit like how Hubsan does it. So the telemetry appears on the screen, but it actually is not coming from the copter, it's coming from the screen. In fact, I would compare this copter more to the Hubsan 501, the Pro version, which is about £200. This is just a little bit more than that, but it's got a gimbal. So yeah, I would compare this more to that. The bad news is when you plug this into your goggles, the screen goes off. So I've spoke to FIMI about this, and it's a hardware limitation. There's nothing they can do about that. I think it's a shame, because what you could have done is plug this into your goggles, and then someone else could have been watching through the goggles whilst you look on the screen. But no, unfortunately the screen turns off as soon as you plug anything into there. But I still think for the price, remember the price, that is absolutely super, and something that none of the others at this price does. There's also a safety feature to completely stop the propellers, whether in the air or on the ground, and that is this stick to the bottom and the home button held for 5 seconds, and that will stop the props. So let's turn this guy on. So we have a press of this button and you get a beep. By the way, when it comes out of the box, every setting change you make, it beeps, but you can turn that off, so I've done that already. We've got a blue screen at the moment, and by the way, to arm this guy, it's both of the sticks in, and it does mode 1 to 3. It doesn't do mode 4, unfortunately, so sorry mode 4 guys, but yes, to disarm, for me anyways, because I'm mode 1, it would be this one down for 5 seconds. Anyways, let's turn the copter on. So a double press of that, and we get the lights, and then it shouldn't take too long to warm up. Hopefully this is gonna come through here. The gimbal's doing its stuff, and then we get this checklist here, which I like, a pre-flight checklist. It's saying gimbal not ready there, and low GPS precision. That's because we are inside. It does take some time to warm up this guy, but I like this pre-flight checklist. So RC voltage 4.1 volts, that's the internal battery. So yes, it's got a 1-cell internal battery, and it is 2950 milliamp. It does take, I think they say, 3.5 hours to fully charge. So yeah, it's quite a while for that, but they say you get 4.5 hours of use out of it, so that's pretty worth it, isn't it? So yeah, let's take a look at this checklist here. So RC voltage, that's this 4.1. We've got the max speed at 18 meters per second, but that's actually probably the setting that I've got it changed to, because you can change that. See, mode 1 there, 30 meters is the return to home height, and then we've got the video channel there. We have got the exposure value and the ISO set to auto, and the date says press any key to exit So I haven't talked about this yet, but this is the little joystick there. So if I press that, then that should go away there. Now I have actually put in a micro SD card. So what you can do is if you press down here on this button, then it should start flashing. That means that it is recording now, the video. Let me just move the gimbal down. It's very dark in here, so it's not going to look great anyways. But yeah, that's how you stop and start the DVR. There is by that button press. You also get a timer in the bottom left hand corner as well, how long the DVR has been going. Unfortunately, if you forget to stop the DVR and turn off the transmitter, then you lose the recording. So remember to stop the DVR before you turn the transmitter off. A potential downside that I can see of this screen is that if you change the angle of it, it very quickly loses its clarity. It's like those old phones, and you have to be facing it directly to see the picture properly. So I'll have to see if that causes a problem when I am flying. So we've got some stuff here. We have got the Copters voltage, so 12.6 volts, it's fully charged. So this icon here is how many satellites that we've got, so just 5, and it's in attitude mode here because 5 isn't enough for GPS mode. And then here we have got the SD card capacity record time, and then this is the interface status they're calling it, but as I mentioned, it's the DVR starting and stopping there. And then this one is the transmission signal for the video, and then this is the RC signal, and then this is the RC battery of the controller. So down here we've got the horizontal velocity, so it's currently in meters per second, but you can change that to mile per hour. And then we've got the vertical velocity there, and then this here, it is the aircraft course relative to the remote controller, and then we have got the flight distance and then the flight altitude. So then if we press this little joystick here to the left, we go into the settings, and this is pretty much all of the settings. So you can see there it says smart flight, so we can do return to home from there. We can do auto takeoff, auto landing, we can do orbit flight, follow me, selfie mode, headless mode, just don't even bother. Fixed wing mode is interesting. The copter will always be flying forward, so you can't fly backwards, so I guess you're flying it a bit like a plane. And then you can exit the smart flight there as well. Although I will say that if you short press the home button, that will also cancel these smart features as well. So if I go into camera settings next, we've got the video resolution, and it's a down press to go into the changes. I want the highest FPS, of course, but you can do 25 FPS in 1080p as well. And then picture quality, we can do different megabits per second, so we can do 20 megabit or 40 megabits. 60 megabits, a little bit too much really for 1080p, it's a bit overkill. I personally go with 40 megabit, but well, that's up to you really, whatever. We've got the exposure value there, ISO, so you can go in there and you can mess around with that. It's on auto. I'm just going to keep everything auto when I'm flying it. There's shutter speed as well. And then saturation, I'm not going to mess with that at all, but that's your color settings there. So press any key to exit. And contrast, The TF card capacity is absolutely amazing, isn't it? All of this. By the way, I've updated to the latest firmware on this, and that's easy to do as well. It's just a file on the SD card, and then when you power it on, it updates. It's just so simple. I absolutely love it. And then you can restore all the parameters there. So GPS mode settings, so you can limit the flight velocity, but I've got it set to 18, which is the most. You can limit the flight altitude there. If I go into there, yeah, I think 500 is the most that you can do there. And the flight distance, however, is not. You can go into the thousands, but I am limiting it because I don't like to fly far. But they say it'll do 8 kilometer, and I believe them. So yeah, we can. And did you see that there? It changed it to 9. I definitely don't want that there. So we've got the return to home altitude. Again, you can change that to whatever you want. We've got an extra figure there, so you can go over, 30 meters if you want. And that's all the GPS settings there. So wireless video channel settings, so we have got all of the different bands, so A, B, E, F, R, that is just great, isn't it? And then the channel settings, and then you should have all 8 there. So yeah, that's just brilliant. And then flight mode settings there, so sport mode off, so you can turn that off or on from there. Attitude mode is currently off, so that's how you turn that on if you want to, but it's a GPS copter, so if you just want to fly around without GPS, that is fine, but I think most people will be keeping that on. Custom settings there, so this is where you can change this dial to PWM for a servo or have it for the exposure value. I'm just gonna keep it for the exposure value, and then a stick mode here, so 1, 2, 3. Don't know why mode 4 is not there. Sorry, mode 4 guys. Calibration, so you've got your compass calibration. You're gonna want to do that, of course, before you fly it. And then we've got RC calibration and gimbal calibration there as well. RC pairing, so if you need to repair it for whatever reason, repair is the wrong word, rebind, I don't know, maybe you lost the copter but you kept the controller, or for whatever reason it lost a bind, then you can do that there. So we've got the real-time GPS coordinates, and if you go in there it will give you the longitude and latitude, but for my own safety I'm not going to give that information away. And then we've got the system status codes. Not sure what any of that means, but maybe it will tell FIMI something. I'm not too sure anyways. So then we've got system settings. I'm telling you that there's just so much here. So we've got language, and we've got English and Chinese, we've got date and time, we've got units, so yeah, metric, and then we've got auto shutdown. And if I go into that option, you can see it's set as off out of the box, but then we've got these different options in minutes, and 10 minutes is the maximum figure you can select. And what that does is, if I say select 5 minutes, if the transmitter doesn't receive any control inputs for over 5 minutes, it will shut down the transmitter completely. The idea being that you have forgotten to turn off the transmitter when you have finished flying. The problem with that, though, is if you have selected 3 minutes, and let's just say you have flown up high or want to do a time lapse or something like that, and don't touch the controls for more than 3 minutes, then it's going to shut this thing down. So be careful with that option, and I will be keeping it off. So next, screen auto off. Now I talked about this earlier. So it is set as off out of the box, but the problem is when you plug your USB connector in there to charge, the screen will always be on. You'll get your flashing indicator that is charging at the top, but it's kind of counterproductive because it's having to power the screen at the same time. Now, I have fed this back to FIMI and they say they are going to look at it, but when you are charging, what you're going to want to do is go into here and set it to 30 seconds. Then after 30 seconds of no control input, then it will turn the screen off. The transmitter will stay turned on, it's just the screen, and moving the sticks actually doesn't turn it back on. So the screen is turned off now, and if I move any of the sticks, nothing happens, but if I press this button here, it comes back on and this will still be flashing if it is charging. Of course, once your controller is fully charged, and the way that you know that it's fully charged is this icon here stops flashing and shows green. You need to go back into the settings and change it to off. Otherwise, while you are flying, every 30 seconds your screen will turn off, and you definitely don't want that. Next, we have sound of buttons, and you so need to turn that off. It is very annoying. Otherwise, anytime you move up and down, the thing will beep and it will drive you mad. And then we've got RF mode settings, so FCC and CE. So what is the difference between these two settings? Well, in FCC mode, the VTX on the Copter runs at 600 milliwatts, and in CE mode, it runs at 25 milliwatts. The transmitter, by the way, on the 2.4 gigahertz runs at 100 milliwatts, regardless of this setting. That's pretty cool as well, and you can format the SD card as well. From here, we can format the external storage of the Copter. From here, we can reset the flight controller. Absolutely amazing. And then if we go into the about section here, you can see the versions of the firmware. So that's the flight controller, that's the camera firmware, and then that is the RC firmware on this controller, and then that's the no-fly zone. So yes, it has no-fly zone updates as well, but of course it has to be done through the card. Now, there are actually some really handy shortcuts on this joystick that saves you going into all of the sub settings. So if I press the joystick up, we get all of the autonomous options here, such as your auto takeoff and your orbit mode, follow me, and all of that. Then if I press right, we go back to the main screen. Then if I press down, we get all of the picture settings, so the exposure value, the ISO, the shutter speed, and things like that. And then finally, we can actually watch the recorded DVR back. Now, it has to be not recording the DVR, of course, and what you have to do, and I'm going to put my thumb up here because it's going to show my GPS coordinates otherwise. So you have to press right and you'll get a flash on here, and then you have to press right again. So right, there's the flash, and then right again, and now we can play back the DVR. So a press down plays the video, and then a press again pauses the video. Now, if I press to the left, I can actually delete that selected video or delete all. And I think I have to press to the left again to get back to the main menu. Now, sadly, it doesn't seem like there is a way to fast forward when it is playing, because up and down does nothing and left and right just stops the video. And when it is stopped there, the left and right will just take you through all of the different videos. Why is it important to speed up the video? Because if you've had a crash, you don't want to watch the entire video, especially with a copter that flies for potentially 20 minutes until you see where it has landed. The clips do only save in 3-minute segments though, so it shouldn't take you too long to go through all of the other videos to find the point at where it crashed. And that is everything in the settings. There is just so much, isn't there? Absolutely amazing for the price. Also in the box you are given a USB adapter, and that is for updating the firmware. You are given what they are calling a quick start guide, which is actually quite extensive, and it's two-sided. But actually if you go onto the FIMI website, then there is a more extensive version of this, and you are given a safety pamphlet. And if you are new to the hobby, guys, please read this. It is very important with this sort of thing, especially as how affordable it is. So the last thing to do is get and fly this thing now. It's winter here in the UK and it is just dark all of the time. It's overcast pretty much 90% of the days, so it's almost like a semi-solar eclipse, so it's going to be very dark. I don't think the camera is going to handle it very well. I think we're going to get ISO noise. I think it's going to look misty. But what I think we will be able to take away from this is how stable the gimbal is, and also how some of the automatic features perform. Now, I'm not going to be able to cover all of them with one battery. I'm going to be doing multiple flights with this guy. So without further ado, let's get and fly this thing. Okay, so let's see what this guy is capable of. I'm going to do an auto takeoff through the menu. So it says that drone will automatically hover at the height of 4 meters. Please be sure to make sure the field is open. Keep away from crowds and buildings. I am doing that. So the props are going, and there it goes. So I've already done all of the calibrations, such as the compass calibration and the RC calibration. The RC calibration is to calibrate the sticks. So the first thing I want to see is what the GPS hold is like. So let's bring it down and bring it close. It's actually quieter than the Mi 4K drone. But what some of you will probably talk about is the chirping noise that it makes, which the Mi 4K also makes. And there are so many theories out there. Oh, it's the PIDs that need changing, it's the props that need balancing. But if you actually talk to someone from Xiaomi, they will tell you that it is a characteristic of the flight controller that they are using, and it's their own stuff. They are not copying anything. Although I have to say, looking at it direct, it does look like it is shimmering, but I'm not getting anything in the video. Now, another thing that I think is going to be disappointing is the flight time. They say that it will fly for 25 minutes, but then there is some small print and it says that was done in laboratory conditions, and also that was done when it was charged at 4.35 volts per cell, just hovering, and they say at 4.2 volts per cell will do 21 minutes in a laboratory just hovering as well. Now it's looking very dark on the screen, but I'm gonna leave everything at auto, because sometimes you can change the settings so that it looks great on the screen, but then the recorded footage that comes back is too bright or something like that. Now it is drifting around a little bit, and that is because it does not have the optical flow, just like the Hubsan Zeno. I don't think it's drifting quite as bad as the Hubsan Zeno though, but I might have some good news, because I've been talking to an engineer and they say that it is very possible that they could release an optical flow device for the underneath, but actually the original reason for having that DIY port is that the engineer of this model likes fireworks, and his original idea was to actually use it to set fireworks off. Now I can't imagine that that's going to do the underside of the copter any good, but there you go, that was the idea of it. So let's have a look. We are at 29 meters and the video looks rock steady, but because it's analog video I am seeing a little bit of interference. Let's make sure I got my antennas proper. But yeah, just as I suspected, I'm able to do really smooth panning with these nice gimbals, and it's not getting blown around whatsoever. I am in sport mode here though, so let's go a little bit higher and see what happens. Now, because I'm on top of myself here, that might not be a good thing for the video, because I have a feeling that the antennas are at the back of the copter. We're at 90 meters there, 102 meters. What's our battery doing? 11.4 volts. But let's see if we can get it to 120 meters, which is the legal height. Oh, just a little bit too high there. I can just about see it, line of sight, and it is drifting a little bit, but it is staying in its position. So let's have a pan around and see what happens with the gimbal. Let's have a look down at the estate, and it's looking pretty nice, I have to say. We've been flying for 6 minutes, and really in this temperature I think we're probably going to be looking at a fairly short flight. If we get 9 minutes and above, I think I'd be happy. And for the price of this thing, I would say that's not too bad, even though they are claiming 20 odd minutes. I don't think it's gonna do that, but I'm just gonna let it sit there and see what it does to the video. It's a misty day as well, but you can see on the controller I can actually see the screen pretty decently actually. Now there's no way I'm going to be able to cover everything that this thing does with one battery, I don't think. But anyways, let's bring it down a little bit lower and see how long we can get it to fly for. So you can see on the controller, hopefully, maybe not, vertical speed down, saying 3 meters per second, but it was saying 5 meters per second before. And I am in sport mode, so maybe that is some setting that I need to change. There's the landing pad. Let's lift the camera back up. So what's the voltage doing? 11.3 volts. We've got 17 satellites. Right, let's check out some of these automatic features. So I'm going to press up here and let's go for an orbit flight. Fly above the point of interest, use the pitch /roll stick to control the circling radius and direction. Make sure the field is open. Okay, so I'm doing that now. So it flies back and then just hovers in that position. Drone has reached its altitude limit. Does that mean I need to go higher for it to start doing orbiting? Orbit flying mode, it says. Point the gimbal down. It's not facing me, so let's get in shot there. And then it says use the pitch and roll, so that's to take it backwards. And then, yeah, there we go. It's orbiting, but it's not orbiting me, is it? I'm having to move, which is interesting actually, with this having a built-in GPS, but that's definitely not orbiting me, is it? Maybe if I push it back a little bit more, is it ever gonna get me in shot? I'm trying, but I'm having to walk around, so really I'm not sure how handy that feature is. Let me lift the gimbal up, will that help? Definitely not in shot there. So yeah, not as easy or perfect as the DJI, but it does do it right. So short press of the home button to come out of that. Let's come down here and let's take a closer look at this thing, because I think it is a really nice looking machine. You may disagree, but I think it looks superb, and I think the Mi 4K looks superb as well. It is so cold here. It is 6 degrees. We're at 11 volts. How long we've been flying for? 13 minutes. That's not too bad, you know. So let's face myself there and put the gimbal up. I wish you could see what the screen was seeing, and I was thinking the only way to do that would be to plug some goggles in, but the problem is when you plug goggles in and go into the menu, you lose the video. I don't think that's safe. I think what would be a good thing to do is get a big massive monitor, and I've probably got one somewhere, with a DVR on it, and then we could take a look at it that way. But it's saying low battery, so I want to test out the return to home, and then we're going to have to do another video, I think, to test out some of the other stuff. But I'm definitely more than 10 meters away there, so I'm going to long press the return to home button, and let's see what happens. It says auto returning. It should go up to 30 meters. I still should have, well, that is going up fast as well because I'm in sport mode. I still should have control of it, so I can turn him around. Do I have control of the gimbal? Let's have a look here. Yeah, still got control of the gimbal. So let's see where it lands compared to where it took off, which is that helipad there. So it's coming down. We've got different lights flashing. Those do indicate different things. What voltage are we at? 11 volts. That's probably just saving the battery. 10.9 volts. I wonder what happens if you just stop the return to home. We can see that it's going to come within about a meter, so if I short press that, will it stop return to home? Yes, it does. So I just wonder how long we can keep on flying and see what it does. So as I say, in sport mode here, Let's get a little bit of height on. I'm gonna lift the gimbal up so that we are facing forward. Oh, that does look grim. And then I'm gonna put full forward in and see what speed we get. 14 meters per second. Oh, I'm getting close to the trees there. Let's try the other way around. Take some time to get to that speed. 12, 15, 16. I just don't have enough space for it to get to its 18 meters per second, but I have no doubt that it's going to be able to do that. So the other feature that I wanted to try was the selfie, but I don't really have enough space for that because I believe it can go up to 150 meters away for that, which I don't have the space for that because those trees are 120 meters away. Let's go up. So it's saying there, please land ASAP, but 10.8 volts. Now we can go a bit longer than that. I'm afraid you are being quite conservative there. What we've been flying for 16 minutes, and you said 21 minutes. Now I did do an earlier flight, and I'm not quite sure why orbit mode doesn't work very well. Maybe you have to be really far away for it to get you in the center. I thought it was strange though, seeing as it's got an onboard GPS in the controller. Anyways, just as I suspected, I did get to try out follow me mode, and it did work flawlessly. Unfortunately, like a lot of my videos that you don't get to see, it was ruined by dog walkers, but follow me, I'm happy to say, worked brilliantly. It is just trying to do a landing on itself. I can resist it, but yeah, it's just going to land. So bit of a bounce there. So there you go, that is my initial flight with the FIMI A3. I absolutely love it, and for the price I think it's going to be difficult to beat. So I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. I'm going to be doing more content with this, despite the fact I hate that it's being compared with the Spark. We can check out the differences there and check out some more of its other features in other videos. I don't get paid for any of this, so if you can afford to do so, I will link to my Patreon in the below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.